It was a bright and peaceful morning when Danielle Carter decided to take her 7-year-old son, Malik, to the park. The sun was shining through the tall oak trees and the sound of children laughing filled the air. Danielle smiled as she watched Malik run ahead of her, holding his small soccer ball, his curly hair bouncing with every step. For once, life felt simple. She had been working long hours all week and wanted to give her son a day to just enjoy being a kid. Danielle was not just any mother. Behind her calm smile and gentle nature, she carried a powerful secret. She was an FBI agent. She had worked on undercover assignments for years, gathering evidence on criminal activities and helping bring justice to people who needed it most. But in this moment, she wasn't Agent Carter. She was just Mom. She wore jeans, a light blue shirt, and sneakers. Nothing about her appearance suggested anything official. Her hair was tied back, and she carried a small backpack with snacks, water, and Malik's favorite comic book. It was their routine to visit the park on weekends, but this time, she had another reason for being there. Unbeknownst to anyone, Danielle was quietly observing something. The park was one of several locations under review in an internal FBI investigation related to local police misconduct. Danielle's role was to blend in, watch, and collect details. Nothing more, nothing less. As she sat on a wooden bench, she watched Malik chase his ball across the grass. He giggled when the ball rolled too far, calling, "Mom, watch me." She waved and smiled warmly. Her heart filled with pride. She had raised him alone since he was 3 years old after his father passed away in an accident. Life hadn't been easy. Between her demanding job and motherhood, she often felt stretched thin. But moments like this made it all worth it. Around her, the park looked peaceful. Couples jogging, parents pushing strollers, kids swinging high in the air. But years of FBI training had made Danielle alert to even the smallest details. She noticed a patrol car parked near the entrance, 2 officers talking inside. They didn't seem out of place, but something about their watchful glances caught her attention. She didn't think much of it at first. After all, police often patrolled the park to keep it safe. Still, she made a mental note. Observing people was second nature to her. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass, and she leaned back, enjoying the moment. She thought about how much Malik loved these outings, how he would tell his friends about playing soccer with his mom. "One day," she often told him, "you'll understand why I work so hard." For now, she wanted to give him every bit of normal childhood joy she could. Danielle's phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. It was a message from her supervisor. Observation log update when convenient. Maintain low profile. She quickly typed a short reply. All clear for now. Proceeding as planned. Then she tucked the phone away and focused back on Malik. He had made a new friend, a little girl about his age, and they were taking turns kicking the ball. Danielle smiled again. These small, innocent connections were what she loved most about children. They didn't see race, class, or status. They just saw another kid to play with. But even in this peaceful setting, Danielle couldn't ignore the feeling that the world outside this park was changing. She had seen too many cases of unfair treatment, too many people judged by appearances. Sometimes she wished she could take off the badge and live in a world where everyone was treated equally. Still, she believed in her work, in uncovering truth and protecting the innocent. As she watched Malik, her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of car doors slamming. She turned slightly and saw the 2 police officers from the patrol car walking toward the playground area. They looked around, talking quietly to each other. Danielle's instinct told her to stay calm and keep observing. She had been in enough field situations to know when to step back. Malik ran up to her, sweaty and smiling, holding his soccer ball. "Mom, can I get ice cream?" he asked excitedly. She laughed softly. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go to the cart over there." She held his hand, and together they walked to the small ice cream stand near the park gate. The man behind the cart greeted them kindly, and Malik eagerly pointed at a chocolate cone. As Danielle paid, she noticed the 2 officers again, now standing just a few feet away, looking around as if searching for someone. She felt a slight unease but brushed it off. Maybe they were responding to a call or just patrolling. Still, she couldn't help but notice how one of them kept glancing in her direction. After getting the ice cream, Danielle led Malik back to their bench. She told herself to stay focused. She was off duty, technically. But her instincts whispered otherwise. Something about the officer's demeanor didn't sit right. They were tense, scanning faces, whispering under their breath. Danielle took a deep breath and decided not to worry. She reached into her bag for Malik's comic book, opening it to his favorite superhero story. He leaned against her shoulder, licking his ice cream and reading along. For a few blissful minutes, the world was perfect again. She didn't know it yet, but the peace of that morning wouldn't last much longer. In just a few moments, everything would change. The calm, the laughter, even the simple joy of watching her son play. The officers who seemed harmless from afar would soon approach her, and a misunderstanding would spiral into something far worse. But for now, Danielle simply closed her eyes and smiled at the sound of her son's laughter, unaware that this quiet park day would soon become a story that the whole country would talk about. Danielle was helping. Malik wiped chocolate from his little hands when she noticed the two police officers walking closer. Their boots crunched on the gravel path and their expressions were serious, too serious for a quiet Saturday morning in the park. She didn't move at first. She just watched as they looked around, whispering something to each other. "Mom, can we go to the swings now?" Malik asked, tugging at her sleeve. "In a minute, sweetheart," she replied, her voice gentle but distracted. She could sense something was off. Years of FBI field experience had taught her to read body language, and these officers were tense, alert, almost hunting for something. She took a slow sip from her water bottle and tried to appear calm. The last thing she wanted was to draw unnecessary attention, but it was too late. One of the officers, a tall man with sharp eyes and a heavy voice, pointed directly at her. "Ma'am, can we speak with you for a moment?" he called out, already walking toward her. Danielle blinked in surprise. "Me?" she asked, turning around slightly, pretending to look for someone else. "Yes, you," the officer said, coming to a stop a few feet away. His partner, a younger man with nervous eyes, stood just behind him, hand resting on his belt. Danielle placed a calm hand on Malik's shoulder. "Is there a problem, officers?" she asked politely. The taller officer frowned. "We got a call about a suspicious person in the park," he said. "We need to check your ID." Danielle tilted her head slightly. "A suspicious person?" she repeated, trying to keep her voice light. "What exactly makes me suspicious?" The officer shrugged. "We're not saying it's you, ma'am, but you match the description. Just standard procedure." Her stomach tightened. She knew this tone, the kind that tried to sound official but carried quiet judgment underneath. She had heard it before, seen it happen to others, but never had she imagined she'd be on the receiving end. Malik looked up at her with confusion. "Mom, what's happening?" he whispered. She smiled at him gently. "It's okay, baby. Just stay calm. Can I ask who called?" she said, turning back to the officers. The younger one looked uncomfortable. "We can't share that information, ma'am," he muttered. Danielle sighed softly. "All right. You can see my ID, but I'd like to know what this is really about." She reached into her bag slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. She knew how easily these situations could spiral. "Slowly, ma'am," the taller officer barked. She froze for a second, feeling a flash of irritation. "I know the protocol better than you do," she thought. But she stayed composed and pulled out her wallet. She handed over her driver's license, not her FBI badge. Not yet. She wasn't here in an official capacity, and flashing that badge too early could complicate things. The officer took the ID and looked at it, then at her, then at Malik. "What are you doing out here today?" he asked. Danielle gave a small laugh. "Playing at the park. You know, like everyone else here." The younger officer shifted uneasily. "You come here often?" "Sometimes. It's near our home," she replied calmly. But the taller officer wasn't convinced. "You've been sitting on that bench for a while," he said. "Taking notes on your phone. That's unusual for a parent." Danielle's eyes narrowed slightly. "I was texting," she said. "Is that illegal now?" The officer's tone hardened. "We're just doing our job, ma'am. You don't need to get defensive." "I'm not being defensive," she said evenly. "I'm just asking what I did wrong." There was a pause, that kind of uncomfortable silence where everyone could feel the tension thickening. People nearby began to watch, whispering quietly. Danielle could feel her heart beating faster. Not out of fear, but out of disbelief. She had seen police confront innocent people before, but standing there with her child beside her, it hit different. The taller officer stepped closer. "Look, if you cooperate, this will be quick." "Can we check your bag?" That's when Danielle's patience began to fade. "You don't have a warrant," she said. "And I haven't done anything suspicious. You've seen my ID, so unless I'm under arrest, I think we're done here." The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me how to do my job." She stayed silent, meeting his stare. Years of training had taught her how to hold her ground without flinching. Malik squeezed her hand tightly, sensing her tension. "Mommy, are they mad at us?" he whispered. "No, baby," she said softly. "They're just confused." That answer seemed to anger the officer even more. "Step aside, ma'am," he ordered, voice rising. "I think I'll stay right here," she replied, her voice firm but calm. And that's when it happened. In one sudden movement, the officer reached out and grabbed her arm. She gasped in shock, stumbling backward as he twisted her wrist slightly. Malik screamed, "Stop! Don't hurt my mom!" The younger officer looked horrified. "Sir, maybe we should stay back," the older one barked. Danielle's training kicked in immediately. She didn't fight back, not yet. She knew better than to escalate. She stayed still, eyes steady, voice calm even through the pain. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. People began pulling out their phones, recording. The tension in the park was thick now, the laughter gone, replaced by shocked silence. And as the officer tightened his grip, he had no idea that the woman he was trying to control was not just a mother in the park. She was a federal agent, and his worst mistake was about to unfold right in front of everyone. For a moment, the park went completely silent. The sound of Malik's frightened cries cut through the air like glass. "Let my mom go," he screamed, tugging on the officer's sleeve with his small hands. Danielle could feel her heart shatter hearing her son's voice tremble like that, but she knew she had to stay calm. Losing control would only make things worse. "Sir," she said slowly, her voice firm but steady. "I'm not resisting. You're making a very big mistake." But the officer didn't listen. His grip on her arm tightened and he barked, "Then stop moving." His partner looked unsure, glancing around at the growing crowd. Parents nearby pulled their children close, whispering nervously. A few people had their phones out, recording everything. The peaceful park had turned into a scene of chaos. Danielle's training flashed in her mind. "Stay composed. Stay professional. Control your breathing." She took a slow breath, forcing her pulse to steady. Even though she was angry, she refused to let it show. Years in the FBI had taught her that sometimes silence was more powerful than shouting. "Officer," she said carefully, "I'm going to ask you to release me. I'm not a threat." "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped, pushing her slightly as if to prove dominance. Malik started crying harder. "Mommy, please, let's go home," he whimpered, clutching her leg. The younger officer finally spoke up. "Sir, she's with her kid. Maybe we should just—" The older one interrupted. "You think just because she's got a kid she's innocent? We've seen this trick before." That word, trick, stung Danielle. She couldn't believe how quickly a calm day had turned into this. She looked at him directly, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "You're out of line," she said quietly. The officer frowned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she replied. "And every second you continue this, you're digging yourself deeper." The crowd began to murmur. Someone shouted, "Hey, leave her alone!" Another person called out, "She didn't do anything!" Phones were raised higher now, capturing every detail. The younger officer, clearly anxious, stepped forward. "Sir, the cameras—" he whispered, but his partner ignored him. "I said quiet," he barked, not realizing how badly the situation was spiraling. His face was flushed with frustration, the kind that comes when pride blinds reason. Danielle felt her arm ache where he'd grabbed her, but she stayed composed. Not yet, she thought. Don't reveal it yet. She knew timing was everything. If she flashed her badge too early, the officer might try to cover it up. But if she waited until the right moment, the truth would hit him like a thunderclap. She glanced down at Malik, who was trembling. "It's okay, baby," she whispered softly. "Mommy's okay." The officer heard her whisper and scoffed. "Don't play the victim," he said bitterly. "You people always have some story." Those words hit Danielle harder than the shove. You people. She'd heard it before. The quiet poison of prejudice wrapped in authority. Her jaw tightened. She looked around and saw the crowd watching, horrified but silent. For many of them, it was just another scene they'd seen online. But for her it was real, painfully real. Her patience was running thin. She slowly straightened her back and looked him in the eye. "You don't want to do this," she said softly, almost warning him. Is that a threat? He sneered. It's advice, she replied, her voice calm and deadly certain. He hesitated for a moment, but pride pushed him forward. That's it. Turn around and put your hands behind your back, Malik screamed again. No! Don't take my mom. His voice cracked and tears streamed down his cheeks. The crowd's frustration grew louder. That was it. The moment Danielle knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had to stop this before it got worse. Officer, she said firmly, raising her voice just enough for everyone to hear. Before you do something you'll regret for the rest of your career, you need to see this. She reached slowly into her bag with her free hand. The officer tensed, instinctively grabbing his holster. Easy, someone from the crowd shouted. She's not armed. Danielle pulled out her federal identification badge, flipping it open in one smooth motion. The golden FBI emblem gleamed under the sunlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer froze. His grip loosened instantly as he leaned closer to look. His partner's eyes went wide. Oh my God, the younger one muttered. Danielle's tone turned cold, her voice suddenly carrying the authority that came with years of federal service. You just assaulted a federal agent, she said, every word measured and precise. The color drained from the older officer's face. He took a step back, his mouth opening but no words coming out. I didn't know. You didn't ask, she interrupted sharply. You assumed. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others shouting angrily at the officers. Phones were still recording. The officer's arrogance melted into pure panic. He looked around helplessly, realizing the entire scene was being broadcast live across social media. Danielle straightened her sleeve and gently knelt beside Malik, wrapping her arms around him. It's okay, baby, she whispered. Mommy's got this. He clung to her, crying into her shoulder. As she stood up again, her eyes locked on the officer. You owe my son an apology, she said quietly. But he just stared, pale and trembling, as the younger officer whispered frantically into his radio, calling for a supervisor. The moment hung in the air like electricity, the tension, the shock, the realization that a simple act of prejudice had just exploded into something far bigger. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. And as she stood there, badge gleaming and her son safe in her arms, everyone in that park knew. This was no ordinary woman. This was the calm before justice struck back. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. The park was completely still, the air thick with disbelief. The golden badge in Danielle's hand shimmered under the sunlight. Bold letters spelling out Federal Bureau of Investigation. The officer who had grabbed her stared at it as if his entire world had just collapsed in front of him. Danielle didn't move. She stood tall, calm and composed, though inside her heart still raced. Not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. Her son Malik held onto her tightly, his small fingers gripping her jacket. She could feel his heart pounding against her leg. The crowd whispered in shock. She's FBI? Someone said. Oh my God, she's an agent. Another voice gasped. Phones kept recording, capturing every expression, every heartbeat of the moment. The younger officer took a step back, stammering. Ma'am, we had no idea. Danielle looked at him, not with anger, but with a quiet disappointment that cut deeper than any shout could. You didn't bother to ask, she said softly. You just assumed. The older officer, the one who had struck her, was frozen in place. His hands trembled slightly, his face drained of color. The weight of what he had done was hitting him all at once. The assault, the crowd, the cameras, and now the horrifying truth that the woman he had manhandled was not just innocent, but a federal agent. I'm sorry, he stuttered. It was a misunderstanding. Danielle tilted her head slightly, her voice cool and steady. A misunderstanding? She repeated. You approached me without reason. You grabbed me in front of my child. And you call that a misunderstanding? Her words weren't shouted, but they carried power, the kind that made everyone listening fall silent again. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. Malik looked up at her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. Mommy, he whispered. Are they in trouble now? Danielle looked down and smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. That's not for me to say, she replied gently. But they'll learn something important today. By now a supervisor had arrived, Another officer, older and more composed. He pushed through the crowd, eyes widening when he saw the badge in Danielle's hand. "Agent Carter?" he asked, his tone respectful, almost nervous. She nodded. "Yes, and you are?" "Lieutenant Parker, ma'am," he said quickly. I didn't know you were conducting work in this area." "I wasn't," she said sharply. "Not today. Today I was just a mother spending time with her son." Her words hung heavy in the air. The supervisor turned toward the two officers. "What happened here?" he demanded, his tone suddenly hard. The younger officer swallowed. "Sir, we thought she matched a description from a call." Danielle crossed her arms. "A call," she said. "And what was that description exactly?" Neither of them answered. The silence was louder than any confession. The supervisor looked furious now. "You two back to the car now." The older officer hesitated. "Sir, now," the supervisor barked, his voice echoing through the park. As the two officers turned and walked away, heads low, the crowd began to applaud softly. Not the loud, cheering kind of applause, but the slow, emotional kind, full of support and anger all at once. People were whispering things like "good for her" and "finally justice." Danielle didn't smile. She wasn't interested in being anyone's hero at that moment. She was thinking about Malik. How scared he must have been. How close things came to going wrong. She crouched down to his level and hugged him tightly. "It's okay now, baby," she said softly. "Everything's okay." Malik sniffled and looked at her. "They were mean to you, Mommy." "I know," she whispered. "But sometimes people act out of fear, not reason. The best thing we can do is stay calm and stand for what's right." He nodded slowly, still clinging to her. The supervisor cleared his throat. "Agent Carter, on behalf of the department, I want to apologize for—" She stood up and raised a hand. "Save it," she said, not unkindly. "Apologies mean nothing without accountability." He nodded awkwardly, unable to meet her eyes. Danielle looked around at the crowd, at the parents holding their children, at the people still recording, at the witnesses who had seen everything. She knew this video would go viral. By the evening, her face would be all over social media, and the truth would spread faster than any official report ever could. She didn't want fame. She didn't want pity. What she wanted was change, real change. Taking Malik's hand, she turned to leave. As they walked down the park path, people stepped aside for her, some nodding respectfully, others whispering words of admiration. Malik looked up at her, eyes full of questions. "Mommy, are you mad at them?" Danielle sighed softly. "No," she said. "I'm disappointed. They wear a badge too, but they forgot what it's supposed to mean." He thought about that for a moment, then said, "You didn't forget." That made her smile. She squeezed his hand gently. "No, baby," she said. "I never will." As they reached the car, Danielle glanced back at the park one last time. The scene that had begun as an ordinary family outing had turned into a powerful lesson for everyone watching. The officer's mistake had been simple but dangerous. They saw color before character, suspicion before truth, and now that mistake had cost them more than they could imagine. Danielle started the engine, her reflection in the mirror calm but firm. She knew this moment wasn't just hers. It was for every person who'd ever been judged unfairly. The world would soon know what happened here. And as she drove away with Malik beside her, the golden badge in her hand caught one last flash of sunlight, a symbol not of power, but of truth. The moment Danielle drove away, the park remained strangely quiet, the kind of silence that lingers after something unforgettable happens. People were still standing there, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A few were still recording, others whispering to each other, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. The two officers stood frozen near their patrol car, neither daring to look at the crowd nor at each other. The younger one's hands were shaking. He looked pale, guilt and fear written all over his face. "We're done," he whispered under his breath. "We're so done." The older officer didn't reply. His pride had vanished, replaced by a cold realization, one that hit harder than any punishment could. He had crossed the line, not just with anyone, but with a federal agent, and now the whole world would know. Meanwhile, Danielle drove silently down the road, Malik sitting beside her. The car's engine hummed softly, but neither of them spoke. The adrenaline was fading, and all that was left was exhaustion, the heavy kind that settled deep inside. After a while, Malik broke the silence. "Mommy," he said quietly, "why did they do that to you?" Danielle glanced at him, her heart aching at the innocence in his voice. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "people let fear make their choices for them. They see what they want to see, not what's really there." He frowned, thinking about it. "But you didn't do anything wrong." "I know," she said softly, "but that doesn't always stop people from judging." Malik looked down at his hands, still small and soft, clutching his toy car. "Were they scared of you?" Danielle gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe they were scared of what I represent, a truth they're not ready to face." Back at the park, the scene was turning into a media storm. Someone had already uploaded the video online, and within minutes it started spreading. The title read, "Police assault single black mom until she shows her FBI badge." By the time Danielle and Malik reached home, her phone was buzzing nonstop, calls from colleagues, messages from the FBI Public Affairs Office, even journalists trying to get her statement. But she ignored them all. Right now, she just wanted to protect her son from the noise. She parked the car, turned to Malik, and smiled softly. "Go wash your hands, baby. I'll make us some lunch." He nodded and ran inside, his energy returning now that they were home. Danielle sat in the car for a moment longer, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She touched her cheek where the officer's hand had grazed her earlier. It wasn't bruised, but it hurt. Not physically, but emotionally. She had faced danger before, real danger. Undercover missions, armed suspects, life and death situations. But this was different. This was personal. This was about dignity. When she finally stepped inside, she found Malik sitting at the kitchen table, swinging his legs, waiting for her. "Can we go to the park again someday?" he asked, his voice hopeful but hesitant. Danielle paused, then smiled gently. "Yes," she said, "we will. Because we don't stop living because of fear." As she prepared their lunch, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from her FBI supervisor. It read, "We've seen the footage. Don't speak to the media. We'll handle this internally. Are you okay?" She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back one word. Fine, but she wasn't fine. Not really. The truth was, she felt a storm building inside her. Not of anger, but of purpose. Across town, at the police department, chaos had erupted. The chief was in his office, watching the viral video in disbelief. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that one of my officers struck a federal agent in public, in front of witnesses?" The lieutenant nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. And it's everywhere now. Millions of views already." The chief rubbed his temples. "Do you realize what this means? Internal affairs, the FBI, the media. This is going to destroy us." The two officers sat outside the office, waiting to be called in. The younger one was on the verge of tears. "I told him to stop," he whispered. "I told him." The older one just stared at the floor, his jaw tight. "Doesn't matter," he muttered. "It's over for both of us." Back at Danielle's home, Malik was coloring in his sketchbook. He drew a picture of himself and his mom holding hands in the park. Above them, he scribbled in shaky letters, "My mom is brave." When Danielle saw it, her eyes softened. She sat beside him and hugged him tight. "That's beautiful," she said. "You made me look strong." He smiled shyly. "You are strong," he said. "Stronger than anyone." Those words warmed her heart more than anything else could. Because in that moment she realized something. What had happened wasn't just a painful memory. It was a message, a lesson. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. She wanted her son, and every other child, to grow up in a world where they didn't have to fear the people sworn to protect them. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and gold. The world was watching, talking and arguing, but inside her home, Danielle sat quietly with her son, holding on to the one truth that mattered most, that no matter how dark the world could get, courage and dignity always found a way to shine through. And though the world saw her as the FBI agent who humbled the police and to Malik, she was something far greater. She was simply his mom, the bravest person he knew. The next morning, the world had already changed. When Danielle woke up, her phone was glowing with hundreds of missed calls, texts, and notifications. The viral video from the park had exploded overnight, millions of views across every social platform. It wasn't just a trending clip anymore. It was a national conversation. News anchors debated it on morning shows. Headlines flashed across screens. Police assault wrong woman. Turns out she's FBI. Undercover agent exposes bias in shocking public incident. Mother, agent, hero. Who is Danielle Carter? Danielle scrolled through a few of the comments before locking her phone and putting it aside. She didn't need to see the flood of opinions, the praise, the hate, the arguments. The internet had a way of turning pain into entertainment, and she wasn't going to let that define her story. But she couldn't ignore what had happened either. The truth was out, and now accountability had to follow. Her supervisor called. "Danielle," his voice said through the line, calm but serious. "Headquarters has launched an official review. Internal Affairs is investigating the officers. The footage is solid. You did the right thing staying calm." "I wasn't thinking about cameras," she said softly. "I was thinking about my son." "I know," he replied. "That's what makes you who you are." After hanging up, Danielle stood by her kitchen window sipping coffee as sunlight poured in. Outside, the world looked normal. Kids heading to school, people jogging, cars passing by. But she knew nothing was the same anymore. Her story had become bigger than her. It was now part of something much larger, a reflection of everything broken in the system she had sworn to serve. Meanwhile, at the police department, chaos had erupted again. The two officers were suspended pending investigation. The chief held a press conference, his tone stiff and rehearsed. "We deeply regret the incident that occurred yesterday," he said. "We are cooperating fully with federal authorities and are committed to transparency." But people weren't satisfied. The public wanted more than apologies. They wanted consequences. Protesters gathered outside the department, holding signs that read, "Justice for Danielle." "Stop the bias. Serve and protect. Don't harass and hurt." Reporters tried to reach Danielle for comment, but she refused every interview. She didn't want fame. She wanted focus, a focus on the truth, not on her face. Later that afternoon, her supervisor called again. "The director wants you to know the Bureau stands with you. You handled yourself professionally under extreme pressure. You're being recommended for a commendation." Danielle sighed. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just didn't lose control." "That's exactly why it's special," he replied. After the call, she turned on the TV for the first time since the incident. Every major news channel was covering the story. Some defended her. Others questioned the officer's training. A few commentators even accused her of using her status, as if her job, her badge, her dignity were somehow a weapon. Danielle turned off the TV. She didn't need their voices to tell her story. She had lived it. That evening, she tucked Malik into bed. "Mommy, are those police going to jail?" he asked quietly. She brushed his hair gently. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But what matters is that people saw what happened." The truth came out. He nodded sleepily. "That means you won, right?" She smiled softly. "It's not about winning, baby. It's about changing things, so no one else has to go through what we did." As Malik drifted off to sleep, Danielle sat in the living room scrolling through her emails. Among the messages from officials and news outlets, one stood out. It was from a mother she had never met. It read, "Dear Agent Carter, I watched your video with my teenage son. He's black and he's scared every time he sees police lights behind us. But when he saw you stand tall and calm, he said, 'She's like a superhero.' Mom, thank you for showing him courage doesn't mean fighting. It means standing for what's right." Danielle wiped a tear from her eye. That message, simple, heartfelt, meant more than any award ever could. Over the next few days, the investigation moved fast. Bodycam footage confirmed everything. Witnesses stepped forward. Even the younger officer admitted on record that his partner had acted out of anger and bias. The city's mayor made a public statement, calling the event a wake-up call and promising mandatory bias and sensitivity training for all law enforcement officers. When reporters asked Danielle for her thoughts, she finally spoke, once and only once. "I'm not here to destroy anyone's career," she said calmly at a brief press event. "But accountability is not optional. No one is above the law, not even those who enforce it. I'm not just speaking as an FBI agent, but as a mother, a woman, and a citizen. What happened to me should never happen to anyone." Her words were replayed across the country, quoted, shared, and studied. Some called her brave. Others called her a troublemaker. But Danielle didn't care. She wasn't chasing approval. She was chasing truth. And though the media would eventually move on to the next big story, something inside her, and in thousands of others, had changed for good. Justice wasn't about punishing two men. It was about opening eyes, starting conversations, and demanding better. That night, as she looked at Malik sleeping peacefully, she whispered, "We did it, baby. Maybe just a little, but we made them see." Outside her window, the world was still spinning, loud and messy as ever. But somewhere in that noise, truth had finally found its voice. Weeks passed, but the world hadn't forgotten. What had happened that quiet afternoon in the park had become more than just a viral story. It had become a symbol. Across the country, people were still sharing the video, still talking about the moment when a single mother, calm and unshaken, revealed a badge that shattered assumptions and exposed a truth too many tried to ignore. Danielle Carter's name had become known in homes, classrooms, and police stations alike. But she never treated herself like a hero. Every time someone called her one, she would smile faintly and say, "I just did what anyone should do. I stood for what's right." Her story reached schools, where teachers used it to start conversations about respect, justice, and prejudice. In one small town, a group of high school students even wrote an essay titled "The Day." Truth wore a badge. It won first place in their state writing contest. Police departments across several cities began holding new workshops about racial bias and accountability. For the first time, officers were asked to talk, not just about law enforcement, but about humanity. Danielle's video was shown in some of those sessions, followed by long, uncomfortable silences that marked the beginning of understanding. Meanwhile, Danielle returned to work quietly. The bureau had offered her a promotion, but she politely declined for now. "I'm not done learning," she said, "and I'm not done teaching either." She spent time meeting with community leaders, mentoring young women who dreamed of joining law enforcement. She wanted them to know the truth, that being an agent wasn't about authority. It was about integrity. One Saturday afternoon, she took Malik back to the same park where everything had happened. The grass was green again, children were laughing, and the world seemed peaceful, at least for that moment. Malik ran ahead, kicking his soccer ball just like before. Danielle sat on the same wooden bench where it had all begun. She felt a mix of emotions, pride, pain, gratitude. The memories of that day still lived in her mind, but now they carried purpose instead of fear. As she watched Malik play, a woman approached her shyly. She was in her 30s, holding her daughter's hand. "Excuse me," she said softly. "You're Agent Carter, right?" Danielle smiled politely. "Yes." The woman's eyes glistened. "I just wanted to say thank you. I was here that day. I saw everything. My daughter kept asking me why those men were being mean to you. I didn't know what to say then. But later when I showed her the video, she said, 'Mommy, that lady is brave. And now she says she wants to be like you when she grows up.'" Danielle felt her heart swell. She knelt down and looked at the little girl. "Then you'll already be better than me," she said with a warm smile, "because you'll grow up in a world that's learning to be kinder." The woman smiled back, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for giving us hope." When they left, Danielle looked up at the sky. The sun was beginning to set, painting everything in shades of gold and red. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, not as a burden, but as a gift. That night, as she tucked Malik into bed, he looked at her with sleepy eyes and said, Mommy, people keep talking about you on TV. Are you famous now?" Danielle laughed softly and kissed his forehead. "No, baby," she said. "I'm just someone who didn't stay quiet." He smiled. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words meant more to her than any headline ever could. In the days that followed, Danielle was invited to speak at a national law enforcement conference. Standing on stage before hundreds of officers, she looked around the room and began her speech not with anger, but with honesty. "I wear this badge," she said, holding it up. "Not to be feared, but to be trusted. What happened to me wasn't just about race or authority. It was about forgetting our humanity. When fear replaces understanding, justice collapses. But when courage meets compassion, everything changes." The audience was silent, not out of obligation, but out of reflection. Some clapped. Others stood. Many wiped away tears quietly. That night, her speech spread across the internet. People shared it with captions like, "She turned pain into purpose," and "This is what strength looks like." And for the first time, Danielle allowed herself to feel proud. Not because she had survived that day, but because she had transformed it. Her story became part of a bigger movement. One that reminded the world that respect isn't given by rank or badge, but earned by how we treat others. It wasn't about shame or revenge. It was about rebuilding trust. Months later, new policies were passed in several states. Officers were required to undergo emotional intelligence training. Community outreach programs were launched. The change wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And somewhere in the middle of all that change, Danielle continued to live her quiet life. A mother, an agent, and a symbol of grace under fire.